Hi, I'm Eric from Simply Elegant Home Cooking. Today I'm going to show you one of my favorite Italian soup recipes. We're going to be doing homemade minestrone soup. Now I should note, I'm going to show you the way I cook it, but this is the kind of recipe that you can really take this and customize it to your own tastes. You can use a variety of different vegetables, different types of herbs. Perfect recipe for clearing out whatever you have in your refrigerator. So stick around and let me show you how to put this delicious soup together. Okay, so to get started, I have fully preheated a large cast iron Dutch oven, and I'm going to go in with just a small amount of extra virgin olive oil along with some pancetta that I've diced up. Okay, and as soon as that pancetta hit the pan, I realized it was just a little too hot, so I turned down the heat just a little bit. And what we're going to do, we're going to let this cook. We're going to let some of that fat render out for just a couple of minutes. You'll notice we did not use a lot of olive oil because there's plenty of fat in the pancetta, and that's what we're doing. We're going to draw out that fat. It has tremendous flavor. Now, if you're a vegetarian and you don't want to use the pancetta, perfectly fine. Just use a couple extra tablespoons of the olive oil. And if using the pancetta, you want it to get a little crispy around the edges, but before it's all the way cooked, you want to add the veggies. So I'm going to go in with an onion and a couple of carrots and stalks of celery that I've diced up. Okay, and after adding those veggies in and giving it a big stir, I'm going to do two things. Number one, I'm going to turn the heat back up to medium this time, and I'm also going to season with some salt and pepper. Now, there's already some salt from the pancetta, so I'm only going to use a little bit of the salt. And as your veggies cook, just be sure to give them a stir every minute or so. We're only going to let these go for maybe like 5 to 7 minutes. We don't want to brown them. We just want to lightly soften them because they're going to cook for an extended period of time in the soup once we put all the rest of the ingredients in. And about 4 minutes into the cooking time for the veggies, I add a couple tablespoons of tomato paste. And right after adding that tomato paste and giving it a big stir to fully incorporate it into the dish, I'm going to add one of my favorite ingredients, fresh thyme. I've removed the leaves from the stem and minced them up. So I'm going to add a couple tablespoons of the fresh thyme. And again, you want to give everything a big stir and keep this moving. And next, I'm going to add a couple cloves of minced garlic. Now, once you get this in, you really want to keep it moving because the garlic can burn easily. We're only going to cook it for about 30 to 45 seconds, and then I'm going to deglaze with some white wine. Okay, and what I added, that was about a cup of an Italian white wine. Any type of dry Italian white wine works good. So at this point, now that we got that in there, we're not at risk of burning the ingredients. What you want to do, you want to use your spatula and just kind of scrape at the bottom of the pan and at the sides of the pan. That wine is going to help deglaze and pull up all of that flavor from the bottom of the pan. So we're going to let this go and cook down just for about a minute or so. Okay, and that does not take long at all. In about a minute, it should be thick and syrupy. And at this point, you want to add the tomatoes. I am adding a 28-ounce can of San Marzano tomatoes that I've crushed with my hands. You can use just regular crushed tomatoes too. They work well also. Now this is optional, but I really like my Italian food spicy, so I'm going to go in with a generous pinch of crushed red pepper flakes. And next you want to add the stock. Now you can use either a high quality homemade chicken stock, or today I'm actually going to use homemade vegetable stock. I have a link in the description box below if you want to see how I made this stock. Definitely use homemade. It adds just such an element of flavor anytime you're making minestrone or other types of soup. So that was 4 cups. Off camera, I'm going to add another 4 cups for a total of 8. Now, after adding all of that stock, it's going to take a couple minutes for this to come back up to temperature. So I've raised the heat again, this time all the way to medium high. We want to bring this to a simmer. And once it's at that simmer, we're going to turn the heat down. Okay, so a couple minutes later, our minestrone is just about up to a simmer. At this point, I'm going to add a couple more ingredients that are going to cook and infuse into the soup. I'm going to go in with the rind from a Parmigiano Reggiano block of cheese. This is a cheese that I use in a lot of my cooking, but if you actually cut off the rind, we can let that cook in the soup, and we're going to fish that out before we serve it. That flavor is just going to infuse deep into the soup. And I'm also going to add a couple sprigs of fresh rosemary. And again, that's another ingredient. We're going to let it cook in there, but we're going to fish that out before we serve it. But the flavor is going to be retained in the soup. Okay, and now that looks perfect. That's the kind of simmer that we want. So at this point, I'm going to turn the heat back down to medium-low. That's a big part of this dish, is controlling the heat. You don't want it too hot at the wrong point in the cooking. So I turn that down. We're going to maintain that simmer for about 40 minutes. Now, while this simmers away, we're still going to be adding some additional ingredients, but you want to get this going first. So I'll check back in a few minutes, and I'll show you what happens next. Okay, and we're about halfway in. We're about 20 minutes into the cooking time. At this point, I have a can of cannellini beans, a 14-ounce can. I'm going to go ahead and add those in. Now, I've rinsed and drained those. So you want to get them into the soup and give everything a big stir. I should note, you can use other types of beans. You could use garbanzo beans. You could really use just about anything. But we're going to get those in for the last 20 minutes of the cooking time. And I also have some pasta water coming up to temperature. Okay, and in the final 10 minutes or so of cooking, we can add the pasta to the pasta water. Now I'm using ditalini, which is a shortcut pasta. You can use other types. Really, any type of small pasta will work. Orzo is a good option too. Added that to some salted water, and I'm just going to give this a stir and let it cook until al dente. Okay, and right after adding the pasta to the pasta water, I'm going to add another ingredient to the soup. I'm going to be adding some greens. Now today I'm using red chard. You can use any type of greens though. The chard works well. Kale and baby spinach also work well. You just want to rinse it thoroughly, dry it off, and chop it up, and we can throw it in the soup. And I added what looked to me like an awful lot of those greens, but you'll notice once they go in the soup, they really do kind of wilt down and cook down. We just want to let those simmer for about the last 10 minutes as we let that cook, and this will be cooked perfectly. So we'll check back in a few once we're ready to add the pasta. We're almost ready to serve this. Okay, and once the pasta is cooked, you just want to drain it out, and then we can add that into the minestrone soup. It's the final ingredient. And I'm going to turn off the heat. We are ready to add the final garnish and to serve this up. And for those final touches, I'm going to grate on a little bit of the Parmigiano Reggiano. And I'm also going to add just a drizzle of my best extra virgin olive oil. And there we go. Minestrone soup plated up. This is going to be good. Let's dig in and see how it turned out. Okay, and this is my favorite part of the video. The flavor of this soup is just so good. The way we infused the Parmesan rind and the fresh rosemary. Now I should add, off camera, I took those out of the soup. You want to be sure that you don't serve those up. It just adds an amazing depth of flavor. That white wine some of those extra steps we did, really building layers of flavor into the minestrone soup. It really shows in the results. This is a delicious dish, and again, you can customize it. You can take what I did, but add your own personal twist. Take this recipe and make it your own. I really hope you enjoyed this recipe. Be sure to like, comment, and subscribe. I'm Eric from Simply Elegant Home Cooking, and I'll see you again soon.